Hey guys, tonight we travel far farther than usual and much further back in time. You're not in your bed anymore. Instead, you're blinking into the pale dawn light of a thatched roof farmhouse, somewhere deep in feudal Japan. The walls are made of paper, the floor is made of straw, and the blanket covering you is honestly not much of a blanket at all. There's a chicken eyeballing you through a broken shoshi panel, and something, possibly a crow, possibly a ghost, is already cawing like it's been up for hours. You're cold, your back is stiff, and, worst of all, someone nearby is pounding something with a giant wooden mallet like it owes them money. That would be rice for Machi, and it's breakfast prep. For someone else, you have absolutely no idea where the bathroom is. And here's the kicker. You probably won't survive this dot, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this sleepy little village of ours stretches now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Are now a commoner, possibly a farmer, maybe a lowly merchant. One thing's certain, you're not samurai, not noble, and definitely not in charge of anything. As you rise from your straw bedding, the stiffness in your spine reminds you that tatami mats were never meant for comfort. They were meant to keep your sleeping space breathable and bug-resistant, not soft. Outside, dawn is already bright. There's no snooze button in feudal Japan. The rooster, the neighbor pounding rice, and the smell of burning straw from someone lighting the hearth all conspire to yank you into the day, whether you're ready or not. And you are not ready. You slide open the paper door to the front yard, really just a dirt clearing with some firewood and two annoyed chickens, and immediately step in something warm, hopefully just compost. You look around and realize no shoes. You forgot the waraji, straw sandals. They don't last long, they're awkward to walk in, and they're essential unless you want tetanus from a bamboo splinter. Historians still argue whether the average peasant truly accepted their fate with Zen-like calm, or whether there were quiet rebellions in the form of skipped chores and exaggerated illnesses. What's clear is this: your daily rhythm is dictated by the land, your lord, and the relentless cycle of rice, taxes, and rebuilding things that were just destroyed by storms or bandits. But first, your job is to help fetch water. The well is at the edge of the village, and you carry 2 empty buckets dangling from a yoke across your shoulders. They bounce with every step. Your arms ache. The air is thick with wood smoke and a hint of fish, because someone nearby is already grilling dried mackerel for their more fortunate breakfast. You try not to trip on the ruts in the muddy road, and you absolutely don't make eye contact with the woman sweeping her front steps. You don't want to give off the wrong idea as you walk past a shrine tucked between 2 trees. You bow just in case. The stone fox statues seem to watch you. Inari's presence or just clever carving. Doesn't matter. Bowing is free. Curses are not by the time you return home. Your shoulders are screaming. You splash a bit of water on your face, which helps until you remember there is no toothpaste. Instead, you chew on a twig from the bitter willow tree and rub your teeth with. Is it hygienic? Arguably. But let's be honest. Your mouth now tastes like someone grilled charcoal inside it. While the fire is stoked and the barley pot bubbles, you try to help grind soybeans with a stone mill. It weighs more than a fifth grader. It moves like a sleepy ox, and you accidentally get a smear of tofu pulp on your only robe. The truth is, your life is incredibly regulated not by laws, but by expectations. You wake early, you work constantly, and you speak only when required. Your social status is tattooed invisibly into your every gesture. A misplaced bow could start a feud. A poorly timed smile might be seen as mockery. You finally sit for breakfast. The meal is served on a low tray. Barley rice, a dollop of fermented miso, and a few slices of pickled daikon. No utensils, just chopsticks and a strong suggestion not to slurp unless you're a monk. You fumble, you drop the daikon. You learn that dogs in feudal Japan are fast, feral, and partial to fermented vegetables. The only sounds are the crunch of radish, the rustle of robes, and the distant clack of wooden sandals as someone hurries to temple. No one talks. Small talk is not part of the morning routine here. Everyone is busy being hungry, tired, and terrified of showing disrespect. You're given a job for the day. Help reinforce the riverbank with rocks. Again, it flooded last week, and someone's goat washed away. You're handed a hoe, a straw hat, and a vague direction to move quickly before the sun gets hot. Spoiler, it already is. Before you even make it out of the village, though, a rider gallops past. You freeze instinctively, head lowered. The horse kicks up dust and stones, and the man on it doesn't even glance at you. He's wearing two swords, a hakama that flows like a flag, and a face carved out of disapproval. A samurai, you remember not to look directly. A commoner staring at a warrior could be seen as defiance or mockery. Either way, it wouldn't end well for you. According to some scrolls, samurai were admired by peasants, disciplined, brave, elegant. According to others, they were barely tethered bullies who used their swords more for swagger than service. Historians still argue whether their presence offered protection or just the illusion of it. But you're just glad he didn't stop. You trudge toward the rocks, the hat itching your forehead, the robe now damp with sweat. Your hands are already blistering, and the sun isn't even high yet. There's a long day ahead, and it's only your first hour. You're not dreaming. You're not in a simulation. This is, in fact, breakfast, and it's about as bleak as the rest of the day promises to be. The bowl in front of you is mostly barley with a hint of rice, because white rice is a luxury. And you, dear friend, are not luxurious. The texture is sticky, but not in a fun sushi way. More in a this was overcooked an hour ago and left near a smoky fire way. It's warm at least, and probably safe. You take your first bite. It tastes brown. That's the only word you can come up with. To your left, someone slurps a bit of miso soup made from fermented soybean paste and fish stock. It's pungent, like someone boiled a gem sock in seawater. You try not to gag. Someone else is gnawing quietly on pickled plums umeboshi, so sour they could deglaze your sinuses. You reach for your tea, which smells lovely and earthy, and you take a sip. It's lukewarm and faintly bitter, with a hint of ash. Possibly intentional, possibly not. There is no sugar, no fruit, no eggs, no milk, And absolutely, heartbreakingly, no coffee. The closest thing to caffeine is roasted barley tea, which tastes less like energy and more like defeat. Your stomach grumbles anyway. Meals here are not social events. No one's asking how you slept. No one's saying, try the rice I added extra love. They're saying nothing at all. Eyes lowered, backs straight. It's not rudeness, it's routine. Morning is for eating, working, and enduring. Historians still argue whether peasants genuinely valued these quiet meals or simply tolerated them out of habit. Either way, there's no playlist in the background, just the sound of chopsticks on lacquer bowls and the occasional sneeze from someone still, shaking off the misty morning chill. And yet there's a kind of calm to it all. The quiet rhythm of chewing, the distant chant of a monk from the temple hill, the smell of smoke drifting through the paper screens, carrying the scent of cedar wood and thatch. Even the bleakness feels orderly. After breakfast, someone hands you a small towel and a basin of water. You're expected to wipe your face and hands, and not in the spa-scented way. No soap here, just water and wishful thinking. You realize with a pang that hygiene is more of a spiritual endeavor than a microbial one. You miss toothpaste. You miss toothbrushes. You miss everything about your bathroom at home, even the squeaky faucet and that one weird corner where dust always collects. The tooth cleaning ritual here involves a tiny brush made from horsehair or a frayed stick, dipped in a powder that smells suspiciously like chalk and dried moss. You rub it over your teeth like you're polishing a rock, then rinse with cold water from a bamboo ladle. Your mouth feels raw, but somehow not clean. And if you're lucky, there might be waki-dawara bundles of medicinal herbs tied together, to chew on, thought to freshen breath and fight decay. If you're not lucky, it's just ash and a little salt. You try not to gag again. The chickens watch silently, judging. Now it's time to do your part in the kitchen. You're handed a daikon radish roughly the size of your forearm and told to help pickle it. The process involves slicing it thin, salting it, pressing it under a heavy stone, and then waiting for days, maybe weeks. This doesn't feel like immediate help, but you nod anyway. A toddler toddles past with a handful of seaweed and no pats. You realize the concept of childcare is very DIY here. Everyone helps. Everyone works. Even the kid just now tasked with carrying a ladle, larger than his entire torso. Outside, someone calls your name, or rather, the name they've given you, which may or may not be new guy. You're summoned to the village center to help with the next task. Chopping wood, not just sticks, but full logs. With a blunt axe, you get 3 swings in before your hands start to blister. You're handed a cloth, not a glove, a cloth. You're meant to wrap it around your palm and carry on. Ganbat, someone says with a grin. Hang in there. You try to grin back, but your face is already sunburnt from just being alive outdoors. Suddenly, a shout, then silence. Everyone turns. A man in nicer robes, probably a tax collector or steward, walks through the crowd with a small ledger and a large sense of entitlement. He's not here for greetings. He's here for rice. And not lunch rice. Tax rice. Yes, in feudal Japan, taxes weren't paid in coins. They were paid in sacks of rice. And while coins existed, they were often used more for high-level trading or hoarding. Your contribution, along with everyone else's, goes straight to the local daimyo, the feudal lord who owns this land, this village, and arguably even your sleep schedule. You watch as he counts the sacks, makes a few scribbles, and frowns. Apparently someone's short this season. There's muttering. Someone mentions bad weather. The steward shrugs. That's not his problem. He moves on. Historians still debate whether this taxation system was an ingenious use of local produce or a cruel way to ensure starvation. But there's no debate about what happens if you're short too often. Punishments, reassignments, or worse, getting sent to help dig castle moats as supplemental labor, which is a polite way of saying dig until you faint. As you return to your wood pile, you catch a whiff of something unexpectedly pleasant: grilled fish. Somewhere nearby, a household has managed to catch a smelt or two. The aroma cuts through the smoke and sweat and ash, and for a brief moment you imagine stealing a bite. But that thought dies quickly. You're not about to test the village's rules. Not after watching someone get lectured yesterday for picking mushrooms from the wrong part of the forest. And yes, even food foraging here has protocols. Certain berries are off limits. Some mushrooms are reserved for the shrine, and anything too delicious is usually claimed by those above your pay grade. Which, let's be honest, is all of them. By the time midday creeps up, you're dizzy from the sun, dazed by hunger, and somehow already covered in mosquito bites, even though you swear you haven't seen a single mosquito. Nature here doesn't announce itself, it just bites you in silence. You slump onto a flat stone under the lone pine tree at the edge of the village. No lunch break whistle, no packed bento, just a few leftover rice balls wrapped in seaweed, and the unspoken understanding that you're going to keep working afterward. You think back to your own modern kitchen microwave beeping, kettle whistling, the joyful hum of a fridge full of things you didn't have to harvest. But that world feels far away. Here, every calorie you consume has been paid for in sweat, bark splinters, and mild humiliation. And breakfast? That was just the warm-up. The sun climbs higher, and you're finally given a break, though no one calls it that. You're simply not being shouted at for a brief moment. You take the chance to lean against a tree, brush some rice husks off your sleeve, and maybe fantasize about crawling into a vending machine full of ice cream. You're jolted from that, daydream by hoofbeats. A samurai rides into view, his horse muscular and sleek, its tack gleaming with carved lacquer and decorative tassels. The rider wears layered robes, deep indigo and gray in the day show. Those twin swords marking his elite status bounce rhythmically at his side. His hair is perfectly tied back into a chanmej top knot, and his face is all sharp cheekbones. And colder than you authority. Every villager drops what they're doing. Eyes go down, knees bend. You try to do the same, but you're not exactly sure of the correct bow angle. 90 degrees? 70? Is there a samurai-specific nod? You panic and end up in a kind of awkward crouch that looks like you're trying to tie invisible shoelaces. No one laughs. This is not a laughing moment. The samurai's gaze lingers just a moment too long on you. You flinch, but he rides on. Slow exhale moves through the crowd like wind through rice stalks. One old man mutters something about lucky fool and hobbles off. You feel like you just survived an encounter with a bear in a business suit. Historians still argue whether the samurai were more respected or feared, possibly both, and often in the same breath. They upheld order, yes, but they also answered only to their lord. If a commoner insulted one, even accidentally, punishment could be swift and brutal. Cutting down a peasant wasn't exactly legal, but it wasn't not legal either. That's why no one meets their eyes. Why no one speaks, unless spoken to. Why you're sweating more now than you were during rice duty. The weirdest part? Samurai don't actually do all that much in villages. They collect reports. They inspect. Sometimes they deliver messages or help resolve disputes. Mostly, though, they serve the daimyo, enforcing his laws and looking effortlessly cool. While doing it, you watch the horse disappear into the trees, its tail swishing like punctuation on an unspoken sentence. Stay in your lane. As the villagers return to their work, so do you now with added humility. You carry baskets of straw, help patch a broken section of roof with thatch, and try very hard not to stand out. But you're still obviously an outsider. Your bow is sloppy. Your grip on tools is soft. You say thank you too often. And you almost stepped on the edge of someone's tatami mat when you entered their house earlier, which was met with a look of sheer spiritual betrayal. Speaking of which, tatami, let's talk about it. Tatami mats are made from tightly woven rice straw, covered with a softer rush covering. They're springy underfoot, smell faintly of grass, and are the foundation for any respectable room. But you are not supposed to step on them with shoes, socks, or anything resembling outside dirt. That's why there are designated spots to remove footwear, and why every single villager keeps glancing at your feet, like they're ticking bombs. There's also an invisible hierarchy to room layouts, where you sit on the tatami matters, facing. The entrance is rude. Sitting in the high seat without invitation? Social suicide. You're learning fast, but not fast enough. Later, you're offered a chance to help repair a neighbor's wooden sandals. You say sure, and are handed what appears to be twine, woven reeds, and a needle that could double as a fish harpoon. The woman explains how to twist and bind, her voice gentle, her eyes full of barely concealed amusement at your every clumsy movement. As you work, she points toward the mountains. You squint. Far off in the haze, you spot something strange stone, steps climbing toward a wooden gate, half eaten by the forest. Temple, she says. Old. Kami lived there. Ah, the spirits. Religion in feudal Japan isn't just temples and incense. It's woven into everything. Shinto, the native belief system, centers around kami spirits tied to trees, rivers, ancestors, and even moods. There's also Buddhism, introduced centuries earlier, with its own rituals, cosmology, and occasional overlap with Shinto. Shrines and temples coexist, sometimes in the same village, sometimes in the same heart. And you? You've just remembered. You walked past a shrine this morning and forgot to bow on the way back. Great. Maybe that explains the mosquito bites. You mumble a quiet apology to the air and hope any offended spirits accept it. The woman nods approvingly, as if she read your mind. Good, she says. Polite is safe. Polite is always safe. By mid-afternoon, a few travelers pass through merchants with rolled-up silks, herbalists with baskets of dried roots, and One man selling carved charms said to ward off sickness and heartache, you buy one with the last coin tucked in your robe. Is it a scam? Maybe, but it has a tiny fox engraved in it, and that feels like good insurance. Still, you're starting to get hungry again. Your stomach has moved past complaint and into negotiation. You glance longingly at a neighbor's steaming bowl of noodles you don, thick and glistening with broth. But that's a rare treat, not meant for you today. You settle instead for a rice, all wrapped in seaweed and dipped in soy sauce. It's salty, dry, and oddly comforting. It also reminds you you haven't sat down properly all day. You find a quiet spot by a shrine, gate twin stone foxes watching and exhale. The breeze is soft now. The village hums like a beehive at rest. You start to notice details. The rattle of bamboo wind chimes, the creak of a cart wheel, the gentle clunk of someone grinding tea leaves in a mortar dot. It's beautiful. In a slow, aching way, feudal Japan is not chaos. It's not all swords and storms. It's mostly quiet repetition, layered ritual, and the constant balancing act of surviving in a world where your role is both clear and non-negotiable. You lean back. A leaf drifts down onto your knee. Somewhere nearby, someone begins to hum. Dot. It's peaceful, Dot, for now. You haven't even been here a full day, and already your body is stiff, your belly is underwhelmed, and your mind is running laps around social minefields you didn't even know existed. But now, oh now, you get to deal with one of feudal Japan's most feared experiences. Using the toilet, Dot, you are directed behind the house, around a mossy corner where a small wooden structure leans slightly to the left, as though it's trying to sneak away in shame. This is your benjoa pit, latrine with no plumbing, no light, and a smell so powerful it could function as a weapon of war. You step inside, the door creaks shut. There's a hole, just a hole in a wooden plank. It's damp, it's dark. There are spiders. The squat toilet concept is new to you, and your modern knees were not designed for this. You hesitate, try to find your balance, nearly tip over, and then spend the next minute trying not to breathe through your nose. No toilet paper, of course. A stick with paper, maybe, or sometimes just ash, and a prayer. Historians still argue whether commoners used shugi, sticks with cloth or paper for cleaning, or simply improvised with whatever the forest provided. Either way, your dignity is now taking a long, thoughtful walk far away from this scene. When you finally emerge, legs trembling, soul slightly dimmed, you catch a glimpse of your own reflection in a polished copper pot. You look changed, wiser, humiliated, and in need of a bath, which, lucky you, is exactly where you're headed next. But not so fast. Dot, you remove your sandals before re-entering the house, as is the sacred rule. But then, in a moment of exhaustion and distraction, you take one step, just one, onto the tatami mat with the wrong foot. Your foot squeaks against the straw. Everyone in the room goes still. You've committed a mat crime. Now, in your world, stepping on a rug is barely notable. Here, it's like you accidentally licked the dining table. Mats are sacred space, clean, elevated, meant to separate the sea. Outside filth from inner peace. You apologize profusely. Bow deeply. Your hosts smile gently, but don't say much. You spend the rest of the hour trying to telepathically clean the floor with regret. Later, someone offers to help you change your robe. It's soaked through from sweat, soot, and spiritual shame. You slip into something drier still, a simple cotton yukata, tied with a sash, but this time, someone stops you before you finish wrapping it. You tied it left dash over dash right dot. That, apparently, is how corpses are dressed for funerals. Dot. Your face goes pale. You quickly untie, retie, and apologize again. How are you already so good at apologizing? Feudal Japan runs on etiquette. It is the engine, the oil, and the manual all in one. Which side of the doorway you stand on, how you pass a bowl, when to bow, when not to bow, these are not just manners. They're survival strategies, and there are no cheat codes. You're invited to join a visit to a local family. You follow along, bowing politely at every threshold, slipping out of sandals with newfound caution. You sit kneeling, Seiza style, which feels respectful for about 5 minutes before your feet go completely numb and start vibrating like tuning forks. The conversation is low and gentle. You mostly nod and try to avoid eye contact, which is often seen as aggressive unless you're of equal rank. Someone serves wagashi, little sweets made of red bean paste and rice flour. They're beautiful, delicate, taste like chalky jelly. You nod with reverence, chewing carefully. Someone else serves tea, whisked to a bright green froth and bitter as a broken promise. Historians still debate whether these tea gatherings were more about aesthetics or social bonding. What's undeniable is the strictness of the ritual. Every gesture has a purpose. Every sip has a sequence, and your hands are sweating so much you're terrified you'll drop the cup and be exiled forever. As dusk creeps in, the paper walls glow softly with lantern light. Shadows ripple like ink across the floor. You find yourself lulled by the rhythm of the household children folding laundry, elders murmuring about weather, a cat dozing in a corner like it owns the entire province. Eventually, you're guided to the ofuro, the bath. You enter the wooden bathhouse with a small towel and high hopes. The air is thick with steam and cedarwood. A giant tub, carved from hinoki cypress, sits filled with near-boiling water, and around it, wooden stools and buckets. You're instructed to wash first, always before entering the tub. Not in the tub. The tub is sacred. You are not. You sit awkwardly on a stool, pour cold water over yourself from a bucket, and begin scrubbing with a rough cloth. The soap smells like ash and pine. The water is splashy and cold. And then finally you sink into the hot bath. It scalds. Your skin practically screams. But after the initial shock, it settles into something divine. Your muscles soften. Your brain melts. You might actually cry from relief. Communal bathing here isn't scandalous. It's normal, practical. There's modesty, sure, but no shame. And there's something deeply comforting about being just another tired body in a tub. Steam blurring your regrets. You close your eyes. You might even fall asleep. But someone taps your shoulder and hands you a towel. Time to get out. Others need their turn. You bow in thanks, dry off, and step back out into the cool evening air. The village at night is quiet in a way cities never are. No buzz of neon, no rumble of traffic. Just frogs croaking from the rice fields, wind teasing through bamboo, and the occasional hoot of an owl who's probably wiser than everyone you've met today. You shuffle back to the house, this time stepping carefully over every threshold. You make it to your straw mat. You sit, you breathe. Your bones ache. You did not die today. But you're starting to understand why people here don't live very long. Not because of violence or drama, but because even the ordinary is exhausting. You close your eyes. Somewhere in the dark, a rooster starts crowing again. It's only 8 p.m. You'd think after all that you'd get a decent night's rest. But no, feudal Japan doesn't believe in memory foam, white noise machines, or blackout curtains. Your bed is a futon, a thin cotton pad laid out on a tatami mat, covered with another slightly thicker pad that somehow manages to be both too warm and not warm enough at the same time. You try lying flat. You try curling on your side. Nothing works. Your back protests. Your neck issues a formal complaint. And then, just as you begin to drift off, you're summoned to the Sento, the bathhouse again. Only this time, not to bathe. You're helping. Clean it. You drag yourself up and shuffle through the moonlit village with 2 others. One is carrying a bamboo broom, the other a lantern. You're handed a bucket of warm water infused with pine and vinegar, and a rag made from old hemp cloth. The job? Scrub the benches, rinse the stools, and mop the bathhouse floorboards, quietly, carefully, because spirits don't like noisy workers at night. As you scrub, the steam from earlier lingers like a ghost. You wonder, not for the first time, how many people in history did exactly this, bent over wood, scrubbing away another day. Probably 1,000, maybe 1,000,000. You're now part of a very tired tradition. Once back at the house, you try again. To sleep. And finally sleep comes. But not for long. At what you suspect is somewhere between 1 o'clock and 4 a.m. The house creaks. Someone stirs. You feel a tap on your foot. It's time to wake up again, not for chores, not for punishment, but for fire. Watch. In a village where walls are made of paper, roofs are made of straw, and heating involves literal open flames, fire is not just a concern, it's an existential threat. So every night, someone has to patrol. Tonight, that someone is you. You're handed a bamboo pole with a small bell attached. Your job? Walk the perimeter, softly jingling the bell, to let others know all is well, and to let the spirits know you're on duty. If you see anything suspicious like sparks or a candle left burning, you raise the alarm. You shuffle through the sleeping village, barefoot on hard-packed earth. It's quiet, beyond quiet. You can hear the wings of moths flitting near lanterns. The air smells of cooling ashes and damp moss. Somewhere, a dog huffs in its sleep. You pass the shrine. You bow again, just in case. You pass a house with flickering light. The door creaks open and an old woman peers out. She nods once, you nod back. No words, just the silent agreement of 2 people trying not to burn to death in the same neighborhood. Historians still debate how effective these nightly watches were. Did they prevent fires, or simply offer villagers a sense of control over a chaotic element? Either way, you jingle that bell like your futon depends on it. By the time your watch ends, the sky has turned the color of weak tea, gray soft, reluctant. Morning is here, and it is not optional. You slip back inside, peel off your robe, and lie flat on the futon. Your bones ache. Your muscles buzz. Your eyes close. 15 minutes later, someone drops a ladle. Time to get up. You join the household for another breakfast. Same gruel, same pickled radish. Your chopstick skills are slightly improved, though you still manage to jab yourself in the cheek trying to chase a mushroom around your bowl. Today's assignment is announced. It's cleaning and repairing the irrigation channels. You've never been so excited to dig in a ditch. You're joined by a few neighbors, including a man with 2 teeth and the most powerful squat you've ever seen. He digs like the earth owes him money. You try to keep up, but your shovel technique is all wrong. Your arms are jelly. Your legs are sticks. You drop the shovel. Twice. The man watches you and smiles. City? He says. You nod. Close enough. He hands you a gourd of water. It's lukewarm but precious. You drink gratefully. He tells you in slow words and big gestures how the system works, how water is pulled from the nearby stream, funneled into rice paddies, then routed away again. You nod, pretending to understand. You mostly understand the mud. By midday, you're covered in it. Your robe is brown. Your feet are brown. Your soul is possibly brown. But you're getting the rhythm now. Dig, scoop, toss, repeat. It's like a meditation with blisters. You break for a meal some roasted millet balls and salted grains. You sit by a tree, utterly silent, and realize something incredible. You're not panicking anymore. You're still suffering, sure, but the anxiety has burned off. You're just here. Present. Dirty. Functional. Later. You help repair a shoshi, those paper sliding doors that let in light but no privacy. The trick is getting the rice paper taut without tearing it. You tear it twice. Eventually someone else takes over. You're demoted to holding the frame steady. Historians still argue whether daily tasks like these created deep communal bonds or simply wore people down until rebellion was impossible. Maybe both. But as the paper door finally slides shut with a satisfying hiss, you feel weirdly proud. That night, after your third meal of barley and radish, someone hands you a small folded note. A riddle. You're expected to solve it and return your answer in the morning. Apparently, the neighbors have started including you in their nightly Karuta games, a blend of poetry, memory, and sneaky social ranking. You're included a little. You smile, you bow. You take your note to your futon and lie back, staring at the wooden beams overhead. You're exhausted and sore and hungry, but you're learning, and for the first time since you arrived, you almost don't want to leave. You are roused once again by the sound of distant shouting and something being enthusiastically hammered. It's morning. Of course it is. There's no such thing as sleeping in here, not unless you're dead, possessed, or very lucky. After a now familiar breakfast of gruel, greens, and the gentle disappointment of having survived the night without somehow being transported back to your memory foam mattress, you're summoned to join a work group heading to the rice fields. Today you've been upgraded. You're no longer ditch duty. You're now helping with paddy maintenance, which sounds vaguely relaxing until you arrive. The field is a shallow, muddy, shin-deep rectangle of warm water. Frogs and dreams long since given up. The summer sun is already in full attack mode, and you're armed only with a straw hat, a wooden hoe, and your deepest reserve of stubbornness. Your job? Pull weeds. By hand, you wade into the muck and nearly lose a sandal. The mud sucks at your legs with the kind of commitment you wish your high school relationships had. You bend, you pull, and you realize your back is now negotiating a labor union of its own. Beside you, an old woman with skin like wrinkled parchment moves twice as fast. She's humming, possibly a lullaby, possibly a curse. This is tax rice, the very rice that will be measured, bundled, and sent to the local daimyo as payment. You don't get to keep most of what you grow. You don't even get to eat the best of it. Your family may keep a portion, but the rest feeds the samurai class and supports a sprawling system of lords, retainers, and bureaucrats who've never once set foot in this mud. Historians still argue whether this arrangement was a form of stable governance or just fancy feudal exploitation. You, with mud in your ears and a leech on your calf, have formed an opinion. Still, there's something rhythmical about the work. The slosh, the squish, the yank of roots. It becomes a kind of muddy meditation until you stand up too fast and nearly pass out. A teenager hands you a gourd of water and makes a face like amateur. You drink, you nod, you fall back in. Line. The sun climbs higher. Your muscles turn into noodles, and your robe, now permanently damp from a combination of sweat and pond water, clings like a needy ghost. Welcome to the joy of seasonal labor. At noon, someone calls for a rest. You drag yourself to the edge of the field, sit under a thatched lean-to, and receive a lunch of pickled cucumber, barley balls, and miso soup so salty it might count as a brine. You slurp. You survive. And then you're back in the muck. By mid-afternoon. A cart arrives. 2 men climb out officials from the tax office, judging by their robes, and I'm here to make your day worse expressions. They walk the edge of the field, taking notes on a bamboo scroll and pointing at bundles of rice. Occasionally they murmur to each other. You pretend not to listen, but very much do. Apparently, the yield isn't quite where it should be. There are mutterings of adjusted collection, which means the village might have to give more next month. Great. You want to stand up and yell, "Come try pulling these weeds yourself, my guy." But you don't, because you like having kneecaps. Also an interesting moment, one of the officials stops by a frog shrine tucked between 2 boulders and bows deeply before passing it. The man behind you mutters that the spirits are watching the rice too. Superstition, reverence, survival tactic, maybe all 3. Shinto belief runs deep here. Even the rice has a kami, a spirit. Disturb it, and you might cause a poor harvest, or worse, attract Mononoke, angry spirits who feast on misfortune. And honestly, you do feel haunted. Mostly by your own regrets. As the sun begins to dip, the team finally packs up. Your legs are numb, your hands are raw, and your soul feels gently sautéed. You make your way back to the village. On the path, you spot a group of children tying. Wind chimes made of bamboo and seashells. They hang them from trees near the field's furin, meant to please the spirits and ward off illness. You hear the faint clinking sounds behind you as you walk. It's oddly comforting. Back in the village. You wash your feet with a bamboo ladle. trying to scrape off the day's worth of field and frustration. A kind woman hands you a fresh towel. You bow low. She bows lower. You try to bow even lower, then nearly fall over. Social grace is exhausting. That night, there's a small gathering under a pavilion strung with paper lanterns. It's not a festival, just a quiet moment of song, storytelling, and grilled river fish. You're invited to join. One man sings an old ballad about a rice spirit who fell in love with a farmer. Another plays the shamisen, its three-string melody dancing over the murmured conversations and crackling fire. You sit back, chewing a charred fishtail and feeling more at home than expected. Someone asks if you'd like to try haiku. You do your best. Mud on my ankle. Rice grows slow under hot sky. I miss pizza rolls. They nod. No one laughs. You're part of the rhythm now, even if just for a night. As the embers fade and people begin returning to their homes, you linger. Moon is bright. The breeze is cool. The frogs start singing again. You think back to your phone, your apps, your schedule, your endless tabs. And you realize for the first time, no one here cares how productive you were today. Only that you showed up, bowed deeply, and didn't ruin the irrigation. You smile, hobble back to your futon, and lie down. Your hands still smell like rice water. Your back will hate you tomorrow. But for now, sleep pulls you gently under, and there's no rooster. Not yet. You wake up in the middle of the night, not from noise, not from discomfort, but from a dream, half memory, half myth of something watching you through paper walls. You sit up slowly, heart thudding, listening to the silence stretch long and thin. Outside, wind rustles through the bamboo, the soft creak of a branch, the faint echo of a distant makagyo, a wooden temple drum used by monks in meditation. It's oddly calming. You lie back down, unsure whether you heard it at all. By morning, you've mostly shaken the dream off. Mostly. Your chore list today involves walking into the nearby woods to gather firewood and herbs. You go with two others, one boy, about 15, with the smug confidence of someone who's never strained his back, and an elderly woman who moves like she's made of tree bark and secrets. The forest is dense and cool. Cicadas buzz overhead in pulsing waves. Moss carpets the path. You're shown which mushrooms are safe, almost none. Which roots are useful, burdock and wild ginger, and which trees are rumored to house fox spirits. You avoid those. Don't point at them, the boy warns, when you get curious near a half-collapsed shrine covered in vines. They don't like that. Who doesn't like that, you ask? He shrugs. The kitsune, maybe, or something older. Great. You immediately tuck your hands behind your back. Spirituality here isn't loud or doctrinal. It's folded quietly into life. Every tree has personality. Every stone might be watching. Even the wind feels intentional. Historians still argue whether the Japanese belief in kami spirit beings of natural forces was more religion or relationship. But when you're walking a narrow path with only rustling leaves and carved fox statues keeping you company, it doesn't matter. You start bowing at everything, just in case. The group pauses by a torii gate weathered red, half swallowed by moss. Beyond it lies a small Shinto shrine. You remove your sandals, bow twice, clap twice, and bow once more. You've seen it done. Enough now to mimic it. Though you feel like the spirits probably see through your half-hearted sincerity, the old woman places a pinch of salt on a rock and murmurs something about protection. You copy her. There's a carved Koma Inu, a lion dog guardian, watching from its pedestal. Its face is serene, but also slightly annoyed, like it's had centuries of visitors who never put the donation coin in the right box. The shrine smells of earth, dust, and faint incense. There's no priest today, just echoes. You linger a moment longer, not wanting to be the first to turn your back. Back in the village, you pass a Buddhist temple on a low rise. A monk in gray robes sweeps the front steps with deliberate care. He bows as you approach, and you bow in return. His eyes are kind. His broom is very judgmental. You step inside the outer courtyard. Incense curls from a brass bowl. Bells tinkle softly in the breeze. A statue of Juzo Bosatsu, protector of travelers and children, smiles down at you. You light a stick of incense. Not because you know the prayer, just because your hands need something gentle to do. Inside, rows of tatami mats stretch across. The floor lit only by sunlight filtered through rice paper windows. A young monk chants in the background, voice low and even, like rain falling in syllables. It doesn't matter that you don't understand the words. It feels like understanding. You sit for a while, legs folded, spine straight. You breathe. Then, your foot cramps, your leg falls asleep, and your attempt at spiritual transcendence turns into a slow, painful topple sideways. You exit quietly, pretending that didn't happen. The monk doesn't laugh, but the Komanai-nu statue outside now definitely looks amused. Back at the house, lunch is being prepared. Rice porridge with dried fish flakes, scallions, and something. Pickle that smells like regret. You eat quietly, already feeling the forest start to fade from your skin. The afternoon is reserved for spirit duties. Yes, actual ones. You're assigned to help tidy up the shrine near the rice paddies, which involves sweeping leaves, replacing old charms, and collecting fallen offerings like wilted flowers and cracked coins. You carry them in a wooden bowl to a fire pit where they're respectfully burned. Nearby, a small group of villagers is preparing for the upcoming Oban festival, a time when ancestral spirits are said to return. They hang paper lanterns, rehearse traditional dances, and laugh softly at someone who keeps forgetting the steps. You offer to help and are handed a broom. Again, you and brooms are becoming spiritually linked. You overhear stories. One woman swears her grandfather's spirit, visits every year, and knocks over the family sake bottle. Another man insists the local fox spirit once led him out of the forest when he was lost, only to curse his hairline in return. It's hard to tell where folklore ends and memory begins, but no one here treats these tales like fiction. They're not spooky, they're present. They're folded into the rhythm of daily life like seasonings in a stew. Historians still debate whether belief in spirits in rural feudal Japan was driven more by fear, reverence, or just a lack of other explanations. But when your house is made of wood and your world is full of shadows, sometimes reverence is just safer. That evening, a traveling storyteller arrives. He sets up under the largest tree in the village, hangs a lantern, and begins his tale. Children gather. Adults pretend not to, then inch closer. You sit cross-legged near the back, barely able to see, but completely absorbed. He tells the story of a girl who fell in love with a river god, of a samurai who was cursed to speak only the truth and therefore lost all his friends, of a village that stopped making offerings and whose shadows began whispering at night. You realize he's not reading from anything. It's all memory, rhythm, voice. Every pause is perfectly timed. Every glance a thread pulling the audience deeper. You lose track of time. The sky is fully dark when he finishes. Someone hands him a bundle of rice cakes. He bows deeply, his voice low with thanks. The children are asleep against their mother's laps. The air was warm with lantern glow and cedar smoke. You stand slowly, your limbs heavy with sleep and story. Back at the house, you find your futon already laid out. A small paper charm has been tucked under the pillow, a memory for safe dreams. You lie down. Close your eyes, and for once, you don't worry about spirits. You hope they're watching kindly tonight. The next morning greets you with a breeze that actually smells good. You sit up on your futon and sniff cautiously. It's not smoke, not fish, not damp straw. It's lavender, or maybe mugwort drifting in from someone's drying herbs. You allow yourself a few extra breaths before rolling up your bedding, folding it neatly, and returning it to the cupboard like a good little temporary commoner. Today, you're told you'll be helping prepare kimono for a wedding. Wait, what? Before you can panic, someone reassures you that no, you're not getting married. You're just helping starch and fold the garments. Still, there's a stir of excitement in the village. Weddings, while not exactly Hollywood affairs, are important community events. Everyone has a role. Even the weird foreigner who still ties their robe backwards every third try. You're guided to a house where several women are already at work. The kimonos are laid out like delicate quilts across wooden racks. Silks and soft greens, deep blues, muted reds. Some are embroidered with cranes, others with plum blossoms. You're handed a plain cotton juban, the underrobe, and asked to iron it flat using a curved wooden tool and a hot, smooth stone. You're sweating in minutes. Not from the heat, but from fear of ruining something sacred. Kimonos aren't just clothes. They're history, identity, social marker, and textile miracle. All in one. Each layer serves a function. Each color and motif is deliberate. Even the direction of the fold means something. And here's where you mess up. You accidentally fold the collar left over right. The room goes silent. You immediately realize your error. The leftover right style is reserved only for the dead. You've just mummified a wedding robe. Everyone exhales through their teeth. One woman gently redoes your fold. You bow so low your forehead grazes the tatami. You are, once again, mortified by fabric. Historians still argue whether this strict dress etiquette came from religious roots or just centuries of cultural fine-tuning. Either way, you now have flashbacks of folding your jeans wrong and feel personally attacked. After a while, the mood lightens. Someone starts humming a wedding song. A neighbor brings plum juice. You're invited to take a break. You wander to a nearby stream, cup the cold water in your palms, and splash your face. As you sit there, you see two women passing with bundles of obi, the wide sashes used to tie kimono. One turns and asks, half-jokingly, "You want to try one?" Why not Dot? 10 minutes later, you're standing, arms slightly out, while she wraps what feels like 10 feet of stiff brocade around your waist, twists it, tucks it, folds it, ties it again. The obi feels like a corset made of upholstery. You try. Walking, you shuffle like a penguin in a silk straitjacket. Elegant, the woman says, utterly without irony. You're not sure if it's a compliment or a curse, Dot, as the afternoon wears on. You help set up the outdoor platform where the ceremony will take place. Flat stones are swept clean. Paper lanterns are hung in neat rows. Bowls of salt are placed at each corner for purity, you're told. The groom arrives. He bows to literally everyone. His family arrives next. More bowing. Then the bride, veiled in white, with a calmness that radiates out like still water. Her sleeves almost brush the ground. She glides more than walks, and you? You sit quietly on the outer edge, watching every movement, afraid to even adjust your knees in case it counts as an interruption. There's no priest in sight. The ceremony is conducted by the two families, guided by tradition and mutual agreement. Cups of sake are passed, vows exchanged. Vows spoken not as romantic declarations, but as calm commitments to household harmony. Dot, it's beautiful. Not loud, not showy, just deliberate and still. Afterward, there's food. You're told it's a light banquet. To you, it feels like a feast. Grilled eel, braised vegetables, fish cakes shaped like flowers, sweet rice balls coated in sesame. You try not to cry when someone hands you a second helping, Dot, as you eat. A woman explains how marriages here are often arranged between families. Love isn't ignored, but it's not always the goal. A good match means shared values, social compatibility, and stable rice harvests. Sometimes love comes later, she says. Sometimes it doesn't. You nod slowly, realizing that romance here is quieter, slower, more embedded in daily acts than dramatic gestures. No declarations under moonlight. No running through airports. Just tea poured exactly how someone likes it. Historians still debate how much autonomy women had in these unions. Some argue that village women had more voice than their noble counterparts. Others believe familial pressure was everything. The truth likely shifts depending on class, region, and whether your grandfather owed rice to someone. That night, after the guests disperse, you help carry cushions and trays back to the houses. Your feet ache. Your robe is damp with evening dew, but you feel a kind of contentment that's hard to explain, like you were briefly allowed to witness something timeless and deeply human. Dot, back at the house, you unroll your futon. As you're about to lie down, someone knocks lightly at the door. Dot, it's the groom. Dot, he offers you a small wrapped package. A leftover rice cake from the ceremony. Dozing, tied with twine and a plum blossom. Thank you, he says simply. You bow. He bows. Lower. You both keep bowing until one of you finally gives up and closes the door. You lie down, rice cake in hand, and finally exhale. You didn't ruin the wedding. You didn't trip on a robe. You even got a gift. You're getting the hang of this. Dot, maybe. You begin to suspect that any moment of comfort in feudal Japan is immediately followed by something profoundly painful, like, say, a martial arts demonstration, which you are now somehow involved in. Dot, it starts innocently. You're sweeping the courtyard. A man in a brown GI passes by, carrying a wooden practice sword. He nods. You nod. He pauses. You want to try? He asks, Dot, do you want to try? Of course not. You say yes anyway. Soon you're standing on packed dirt, barefoot, holding a bakken, a heavy wooden sword that was never meant to be a toy. It's smooth, warm, and about as forgiving as a brick with a handle. Across from you stands your opponent, a teenage boy with forearms, like braided ropes, and the confidence of someone who has never been hit in the shins by an errant ceiling fan. Just follow my movements, he says, grinning. You do. Poorly. Your first swing misses entirely. Your second hits your own leg. Your third nearly knocks the broom over. But eventually, with coaching, you get the rhythm. Step, swing, recover, repeat. The wooden swords clash with a dull thunk that vibrates up your arm, like a dentist's drill. Then he speeds up Dot now to blur. You're defending, barely, your shoulders burning, your breath ragged. He's grinning the whole time. You're sweating like a rice ball on a summer windowsill. A small crowd forms, an old man chuckles. A child points and whispers. You're now a public spectacle. Great. Historians still argue whether martial arts were widely practiced among villagers or reserved for samurai and monks. But there's no debate about the philosophy behind it. Discipline, awareness, presence, and also, apparently, humiliation. Eventually, your instructor calls a break. You collapse under a tree, cradle your bruised hand, and sip water like it's a healing potion. He pats your shoulder. You learn fast, he lies. Later, you watch. A proper demonstration. A group of older students practices Iaido, the art of drawing the sword and striking in one fluid motion. It's beautiful, terrifying. They move like ink brushed across paper. Fast, clean, final. There's a quiet reverence among the onlookers. No clapping, just nods. Everyone understands this isn't sport. This is life training disguised as swordplay. As the day wears on, you're invited to observe another class, this one in Kyudo, Japanese archery. It's nothing like Western archery. It's slower, ritualistic, a bow as tall as the archer. Each step deliberate. Raise, draw, pause, release. The arrow flies in complete silence and hits the target with a soft, perfect thud. You watch, mesmerized, as a woman in a white kimono executes each movement like a prayer. She never misses. You want to clap. You don't? Back at the house, someone hands you a bag of barley and asks you to carry it to the storehouse. It's easily 40 pounds. You try hoisting it over your shoulder and immediately regret all your life choices. You stagger down the road, limbs still shaky from sword practice, and barely avoid dropping the sack when a rooster flutters out of nowhere and screams at your feet. You are beginning to suspect that Rooster has cursed Dot at the storehouse. You find a few young boys sparring with sticks. One of them hands you a staff. Want to play? No, you do not want to play, but apparently you do. You go a few rounds, mostly blocking and flinching. You manage one halfway decent strike that makes the crowd gasp. You're not sure if it was good or just surprising. Either way, they clap. You bow. Afterwards, someone invites you to sit by the fire. You gratefully agree, then immediately wince, as every muscle in your body stages a protest. One of the elders begins telling stories, real ones this time, of duels fought in defense of family land, of monks who trained barefoot in snow, of warriors who refuse to draw their blades unless absolutely necessary. Strength, he says, is not just the body. It is knowing when not to fight. You nod, then groan, because even nodding hurts. Dinner that night is simple: rice, miso, and grilled eggplant. You eat slowly, savoring every bite. Someone notices your bruised wrist and hands you a salve made from pine resin and mugwort. It smells like wet leaves and hope. You apply it, wrap the wrist in cloth, and sink into your futon like it's a victory podium. Your body is broken, your pride slightly less so. And as you drift off, you realize something unexpected. Despite the bruises, despite the aching bones, you feel stronger. Not just in body, but in presence, in patience, in the deep, calm breath that comes when you finally stop resisting the rhythm of the world around you, even if the rooster still hates you. You wake to the sound of gossip. Not the juicy reality show kind. This is feudal gossip, slow, coated, and murmured over radish washing. Two women are crouched near the water barrel, whispering with their sleeves half covering their mouths. You catch fragments. Double quotes. Already promised when they were 6. But the cousin came back from Edo. And now the family's upset about the horoscope. You shuffle past, pretending not to listen, but the old woman nearest the door waves you over with the international gesture for, you might as well sit and hear this. You do. Today's drama? A marriage match gone sideways. The bride was matched as a child, common practice here. These aren't love matches. They're family deals. Rice for loyalty. Cows for connection. But now, someone unexpected has returned. From the capital with better robes and a stronger family name, and suddenly everyone's future is tangled like wet straw sandals. You sip your barley tea and try to follow the logic. So says uncle's daughter was meant to marry the cousin of that one man who traded silks for millet last spring, but now that cousin might be courting the other daughter, who wasn't even supposed to be in the same district. Feudal Japan runs on alliances, not romance. Historians still argue whether these arranged marriages were oppressive or simply pragmatic. What's clear is that love stories like Romeo and Juliet would have been deeply confusing here. Why would you ruin your family's rice allotment over feelings? As the morning unfolds, you're asked to help hang new privacy screens on the porch of a newlywed couple's home. It's a subtle sign of their new status. The fabric is patterned with cranes, symbols of longevity, and there's a bundle of lucky charms tied discreetly near the doorframe. Salt, rice stalks, a small piece of dried kelp. You're told not to touch the charms with your left hand. You don't ask why. You just bow and keep your hands to yourself. Later, while helping stack firewood, you're cornered by a boy of about 12 who's curious about your marital status. You laugh. He frowns. You're too old not to be married, he says plainly. Thanks, you reply, limping slightly from yesterday's sword lesson. Did your parents forget? He asks, genuinely confused. You try to explain that in your world, people choose their own partners often much later in life, and that love is supposed to be the main reason. He stares at you like you've just confessed to believing in flying turtles. Sounds risky, he says, and waddles off. There's an auntie nearby sorting herbs who overhears the exchange. She chuckles softly. Love comes in bowls of soup, she says, not poems. Later in the day, you're invited unintentionally, it seems, to a tea gathering hosted by one of the wealthier households. You're told to behave and say very little, which is your specialty now. The host is an elegant, older man in layered robes, his hair carefully arranged, his movements as smooth as smoke. His wife, serene and sharp-eyed, performs the tea ceremony with impossible grace. Every motion is a dance. Ladle dips, bowl turns, cloth folds. Even the way she wipes the rim of the bowl feels ceremonial. You're handed a cup. You hold it correctly, both hands, gentle bow, 3/4 turn. You drink. It's bitter, grassy, somehow more flavor than liquid. The host speaks of the season, the weather, and a poem he wrote about dew. His wife smiles politely and says nothing. This is their dynamic, refined and silent. You wonder briefly if they chose each other. Then you remember, probably not, but that doesn't mean it isn't working. Historians still debate whether women in feudal marriages wielded quiet power behind the scenes or lived under strict patriarchal control. Likely both, depending on status. Peasant wives often managed the household. Merchant wives ran businesses in their husband's absence. Samurai wives might wield a dagger under their sleeve in more ways than one. After the tea, you help a group of girls prepare origami cranes for a fertility charm. One of them explains that folding 1,000 cranes brings blessings. They've made 317. You fold your first one awkwardly, and she politely pretends it doesn't look like a wounded bat. Another girl asks, "Where is your wife?" You tell her you don't have one. She frowns. "That's sad." You nod. Sometimes she shrugs. Maybe a fox spirit will find you someone. You're not sure if that's comforting or terrifying. By evening, the village holds a quiet gathering by the river. Lanterns float on the surface paper globes with prayers and names written in brush strokes. It's a small ceremony honoring those who've passed and those yet to come. You kneel in the grass, light your own lantern, and let it go. It wobbles, nearly tips, then catches a gentle current and floats away, its little flame flickering like a heartbeat. You don't write anything on yours, but as it drifts, you think of all the people here who love without saying so, who marry without choosing, who build lives from bowls of soup and shared silences. And you wonder, how much of that would you really mind? Back at your futon, someone has placed another omamori by your pillow, this one tied with red string, the color of relationships. A joke? A wish? You don't know, but you tuck it under the corner of your mat. Just in case. It happens quickly. One moment, you're sweeping the temple path. The next, you're being yelled at for doing it wrong. Not loudly, but with that terrifying feudal kind of authority, where the voice stays soft, and the implications do all the yelling. You've stepped on something sacred. Or perhaps you didn't bow to someone important. Or maybe most likely you used the broom during the wrong hour, which you didn't know existed. Now you're kneeling in front of the village magistrate, a man with high eyebrows, a thin mustache, and the emotional range of a door hinge. He's seated on a tatami platform that somehow makes him look taller than you, even though you're both sitting. The room is sparse. No furniture, no decor, just floor, scrolls, and judgment. He looks at you like you're a math problem. You bow. You wait. You say nothing. Because here's the thing. In feudal Japan, the less you say, the better your chances of not being fined, flogged, or accidentally married off to someone's widowed aunt as a punishment. Do you understand? What you did. He asks. You consider saying no, but instinct says that's a trap. Yes, you reply. What was it? You pause. He raises one eyebrow. I swept during an unlucky hour, you offer. There's a pause. Then a small, almost imperceptible nod. He murmurs, scribbling something with a brush pen. Ignorance is not an excuse, but humility is a virtue. You are fined a single G of rice. That's about 180 milliliters. Less than a cup. You nod solemnly, like this is the most reasonable punishment in the world, and promise to pay it by sundown. Historians still argue whether feudal justice was truly consistent, or if most outcomes came down to face-saving rituals and personal relationships. The magistrate system, part judge, part tax collector, part community scolder, operated on a blend of Confucian principle, local custom and sheer vibes, and bamboo. Because if you had committed a real offense, say, theft, deception, or disrespecting a superior, you might be meeting a different sort of justice, one that involves stripes. Punishment often came in the form of bamboo floggings, administered publicly with measured strokes depending on the crime, the social status of the criminal, and sometimes the mood of the magistrate. Samurai class, maybe a stern talking to. Peasant, back, meat stick. You've seen the whipping post. It's a heavy plank standing in the village square, always swept clean and eerily unused. Not because there's no punishment, but because most people here are terrifyingly well behaved, or scared stiff. You hear a story that night around the fire. A merchant once cheated the tax weights, filled his rice sacks with stones. He was discovered, brought to the square, and sentenced to 3 days of standing restraint, arms tied above his head, legs barely touching the ground, while his neighbors walked by pretending not to see. He confessed everything by nightfall. Another tale follows. A man who shouted at a visiting monk was made to clean the entire temple with a toothbrush made from pine needles. You glance nervously at the broom you just used. Of course, not all justice is harsh. Much of it is social. Whispered disapproval, cold rice at dinner, the sudden absence of greetings. You've learned that being shunned is a punishment far worse than being scolded. At least bamboo wounds heal. The rice fine is paid quietly, with a bow and a note, folded 4 times. You place it on the magistrate's offering tray like it's a peace treaty. You are now officially forgiven, but the incident leaves you wary. You begin to notice rules you hadn't seen before. The way people wait before speaking, how certain gates are entered only from the left, the invisible choreography of greetings, based on age, status, and robe color. Even laughter has rules here. Loud, brash amusement is rare. Instead, people laugh behind sleeves, soft and restrained, like they're hiding a candle from the wind. The tension lifts that evening. A traveling performer arrives, part actor, part juggler, part mimic. He sets up on a straw mat, paints his face in exaggerated lines, and performs a brief Kyogen sketch, a comedic interlude usually paired with no drama. His play, a bumbling magistrate who punishes someone for sneezing during the full moon. The Audience laughs quietly, but they laugh. Even the real magistrate, seated off to the side with tea in hand, allows a tight-lipped smile. You breathe easier. After the show, there's dancing. Not wild, measured, circular, communal. You're pulled into a slow pattern of steps and claps, and though your rhythm is somewhere between baby goat and falling laundry, no one corrects you. One woman leans over during a pause and says, "You sweep better than you dance." You bow. You'll take it. Dinner that night is extra warm. Stewed daikon and yams with a small portion of grilled sardine. Someone refills your bowl without asking. You eat slowly, grateful. Grateful not just to have avoided bamboo justice, but to have learned, however awkwardly, that even rigid systems have room for mercy. That forgiveness, like rice, is portioned in small but sustaining amounts. And when you unroll your futon, you find a broom beside it, wrapped in red twine. A joke, probably, or a warning. Either way, you sweep the floor before bed. Just in case. You wake up groggy and sore, not from punishment, thankfully, but from a kind of cosmic boredom that feels heavier than any sack of rice. The rooster crows. The sky glows. You roll over and try to pretend the 15th century doesn't exist for a few more minutes, but it absolutely does. And today, nothing happens. No fires to put out. No rice to harvest. No traveling monks. No sword practice. No angry magistrates. Just a regular day in feudal Japan, which sounds like a relief until you realize what that actually means. Routine, your assignment? Sit indoors and practice calligraphy. You're handed a brush with a bristle so soft it might as well be fur, a small ceramic pot of ink, and a long sheet of washi paper that taunts you with its emptiness. Your first stroke is too thick. Your second is crooked. Your third looks like a squashed centipede. A stern old man with perfect posture corrects you silently by simply existing nearby. Breathe first, he says, then write. You breathe. You try again. Still terrible. You spend the next hour copying kanji characters over and over again. Your hand cramps. Your neck creaks. Your inkstone dries out, and you're told it's because you're thinking too hard. Probably true. Calligraphy, you learn, isn't about words. It's about presence, about the space between brush strokes, the silence between thoughts. Like a Zen garden, but flat and judgmental. Historians still argue whether this was a meditative exercise or just the 15th century version of paperwork. Either way, you're sweating into your sleeve by line 6. Eventually, you're allowed a break. You walk outside, blinking into the soft daylight. There's not much to see, just villagers going about their quiet routines. One man is trimming bamboo, another is sharpening a hoe. Children chase a paper ball. Even the wind seems to be moving in slow motion. You feel it creeping in, that dull hum of understimulation. You long for a scroll to read, a song to stream, a dumb meme. Anything. You go looking for something, anything to do. You find a woman weaving straw sandals. She doesn't look up. You ask if she'll teach you. She shrugs, then hands you a bundle of straw and 2 bent sticks. It takes you 20 minutes to make a sandal that could generously be described as unwearable. You place it aside like it's cursed and move on. Later, you spot an older man tending to a garden. He's raking carefully around small green shoots. You offer to help. He hands you the rake without a word. You spend an hour dragging lines through. Gravel dot, then smoothing them out, then doing it again. You're pretty sure this is just decorative, and yet it helps. There's a rhythm, a simplicity, a quiet discipline that asks nothing more of you than keep moving. You begin to notice things, the exact way the light falls through the pine branches, the way the wind carries the smell of distant wood smoke, the sound of someone rinsing rice 3 houses over, the occasional grunt from the smithy as metal meets stone. You're not entertained, you're not excited, but you are present. Eventually someone calls you over to try the bijoua, a short-necked lute used in storytelling. You pluck a few hesitant notes. It sounds like someone crying into a tin cup. The teacher nods approvingly. You're not sure if he's serious, or if this is just what encouragement sounds like here. He shows you how to hold it, how to strike the strings with a fan-shaped plectrum. You try again. It still sounds tragic, but more intentional, somehow. You're told the biwa was used by blind monks who recited epic tales of warriors and ghosts. Their performances were mournful, slow, heavy with silence. You try to imagine listening to a 3-hour song about war and honor with nothing but a lute and a drum to set the tone. No harmonies. No backing vocals. No beat, drop, dot, and yet the idea begins to make sense, dot, if every note is hard-earned. Every word becomes precious. You pluck again one clear, sorrowful tone, and suddenly it feels less boring and more ancient, like time has curled inward. Later, you're asked to help mend fishing nets. This, too, is an exercise in repetition. Thread the line, knot it twice, pull it tight, repeat. You sit in a line with 4 others, all bent forward, fingers working. No one talks, there's nothing to say. It's not lonely, just quiet. Eventually someone brings snacks, senbai, crispy rice crackers, flavored with soy sauce. You accept one gratefully, even though you nearly break a tooth biting into it. You offer a quiet thank you. Someone nods. The sun begins to set. You help roll up the nets, stack them near the dock, and stretch your back. You've barely moved all day, and yet your spine feels like it's made of bamboo skewers. Dinner is familiar. Rice, miso, pickled. Radish. You don't complain. You don't want to complain, because in the stillness of today, you've discovered something unsettling. Boredom has its own kind of depth, a soft ache that reveals the shape of your mind. You lie on your futon, staring at the wooden ceiling beams. A spider crosses one slowly. You don't swat it. There's no rush, no noise, no dopamine spike, just quiet. And sometimes that's enough. Tonight you don't get to sleep in, not because of dreams, or mosquitoes, or that cursed rooster. No. Tonight you've been drafted for night watch again, only this time it's your rotation. Official. Expected. No bell to politely jingle this time. Just you, a fire-hardened stick, and a lantern with barely enough oil to last the shift. You're handed a padded vest, a cloth hood, and a brief explanation. Your job is to walk the village perimeter, tap the ground once at each gate, and whisper the hour if asked. If you see fire, shout. If you hear footsteps where footsteps shouldn't be, shout louder. You ask what to do if you see a ghost. They don't answer. You set off just after sunset. The village is a different creature at night. The paper walls glow faintly from within. lanterns flickering behind them like quiet heartbeats. The air is cool, damp, and filled with the scents of charcoal, cedar, smoke, and distant miso. You walk slowly, quietly. Your stick taps rhythmically against the earth. Tap, tap, pause. Tap dot, it would be soothing if it weren't so creepy. You pass. The shrine first. 2 stone foxes guard the gate. You bow even now. Especially now, your breath mists slightly. You tug your robe tighter. You pass the temple. The monks are asleep. Their incense still burns faint curls of sandalwood leaking. Through wooden slats, a dog snores nearby, twitching with dreams. Then, the southern fence. You pause. Beyond it is forest ink black and humming with cicadas. A path leads out of the village and into the hills. It disappears quickly into trees that somehow feel two. Quiet dot, you tap the ground with your stick. The echo feels off. You walk a little faster dot. Night watch in feudal Japan wasn't about weapons or training. It was about vigilance. The greatest threats were fire, thieves, and superstition. A wandering spirit, a stranger with ill intent, a careless coal rolling onto a straw mat. Historians still argue whether these nightly patrols were effective or just symbolic, but you can feel their purpose now. In the dark and the stillness, your mind becomes the most dangerous thing in the village. You check each gate, each wall, each side street. You think you see movement once, just a shadow, probably a tree branch. But you tighten your grip on the stick anyway. Dot, in the far courtyard, someone left a candle burning. You extinguish it with a quick breath and a whispered blessing. You're proud of yourself. You realize you're lost. Only slightly, but enough to panic. Dot, the paths all look the same now. Shadows have folded over the landmarks. You try retracing your steps. You take a wrong turn. A chicken squawks from nowhere. You nearly drop the lantern. Then a voice, quiet and amused, calls your name. Dot, it's the old woman from the weaving house. She's seated by her porch, sipping tea. You missed the northern gate, she says, smiling. You bow awkwardly. She points with her teacup. Back on track, you complete the circuit. Your lantern flickers dangerously low. You quicken your pace. When you reach the final checkpoint, the eastern fence, you tap the ground 3 times to signal your shift's end. Dot, tap, tap, tap. You exhale fully for the first time in an hour. Someone relieves you, a boy no older than 16. He nods, accepts the nearly empty lantern, and disappears into the dark with the calm of someone who's done this a dozen times. You, meanwhile, feel like you've just returned from war. Dot, back in the house. Your futon never looked more inviting, but your heart's still racing. You lie there, waiting for sleep to pull you under, and just as you drift off, a real alarm, a sharp, urgent shout from across the village. Then another. Footsteps. Doors slide open. Voices rise. You scramble upright. A fire? No. Just a wild boar. Dot, apparently a hungry one, wandered into the vegetable patch. Half the village turns up with sticks, pans, and buckets, chasing it back into the forest with an energy you haven't seen since the wedding feast. Dot. Someone says this happens once every few months. The boar knows where the good tubers are. You help retie the fence and are handed a slice of raw, sweet potato as thanks. You chew it slowly. It tastes like effort. The sky begins to lighten. Morning again. You try lying down for a nap, but it's already too late. The rooster crows, smug as ever. A pot clinks onto the hearth. Another day has begun. You're handed a list of tasks. Number. Rest for the watchman. You start with sweeping. Again, you barely even groan this time. By midday, you're nodding off while rinsing rice. Someone laughs gently and lets you nap in the shade of the tool shed. You sleep for 20 minutes. Wake to the sound of rain. Soft, steady, cool. You sit with your tea, watching the drops bounce off the eaves. The storm is gentle, the kind that forces the whole village to slow down. No weeding today, no pounding machi, just the quiet rustle of wet bamboo and the occasional splash of someone running barefoot from one house to another. It's the first time you've sat still without guilt. And maybe that's the lesson. In a place where everything must be done right on time with grace, you still find small mercies. A misstep forgiven, a neighbor guiding you home, a nap under a roof of tools. Feudal Japan doesn't coddle you, but it doesn't discard you either. Not if you keep walking your route. Not if you remember to bow. By now, you expect exhaustion, you expect rice, you expect to be handed something heavy and pointy at any given moment and told, "We use this for digging." But today, what you don't expect, what no one expects, is the sky turning a color. It should never be. Yellow, green, thick, and wrong. A storm is coming, but not the ordinary kind. You see it first in the eyes of the villagers. How they all pause mid-task. How one woman drops a basket of turnips without noticing. How even the chickens go silent. That alone is terrifying. Then the sound, a low, distant rumble that doesn't fade, doesn't break like thunder, just sits in the air like the land is growling. You've walked through storms before, but not this. People begin tying up roofs, shuttering doors, gathering kindling and rice bundles like their lives depend on it. Because they do. Someone tosses you a rope and points to the supply hut. You get to work without asking questions. This isn't just weather. This is a test. Feudal Japan, for all its ceremony and routine, is always one bad week away from disaster. Famine, fire, flood, typhoon, war. And the worst part? There's no real warning system. No meteorologist. No emergency radio. Just gut, instinct, and centuries of accumulated fear. Historians still argue whether these disasters were dealt with through formal protocols or spontaneous community effort. What's clear is that everyone knows their role, and now, so do you. You help reinforce the eastern gate, which groans against the wind. You carry buckets indoors, weigh down the thatch roof with stones, and even help move an elderly couple into the temple for shelter. And then, it hits. Rain like needles, wind like a scream. You've never heard anything like it. The thatched walls shiver. The ceiling flutters. You sit inside a house that suddenly feels like it's made of paper, and it is. Someone lights a lantern more, for comfort and light. The children huddle together, silent and wide-eyed. The adults whisper prayers, some to the kami, some to Buddha, some to both, just to cover all bases. You try not to show it, but you're scared. Not of being hurt, but of being helpless. You realize that for all the lessons you've learned about bowing, about rice, about the correct angle for folding sleeves, nothing prepares you for how fragile life is here. The storm lasts for hours. You help bail water with a gourd. You help mop. You hold up a beam as it threatens to crack. You learn how to patch a roof mid-rain using nothing but rope and a very, very brave ladder. And then, as quickly as it came, the wind dies. The rain softens. The sun slips back into view. Sheepish and unsure, the village stirs. You step outside. The air is clean, too clean. The sky is pale. The damage not catastrophic. A few fences broken. A cart overturned. One roof lost entirely, but no lives. You hear someone say it aloud. We were lucky. You want to believe it's more than luck, that the community effort helped. That, all the traditions, all the small tasks, the rituals, they meant something, that they made the village strong, flexible, and ready. People begin rebuilding immediately. There is no insurance, no forms to file, just rope, teamwork, and rice gruel, with extra salt to fight exhaustion. You help lift a support beam back into place. You carry fresh straw. You even light incense at the shrine in quiet thanks. But as night falls, the real hunger sets in. The storm washed away more than roofs. It flooded part of the rice field. Some of the root vegetables are gone. The fish traps were snapped in the current. Dinner is meager. Plain rice, half a daikon, and a thin soup with bits of wild greens, and still no one complains. They eat quietly, slowly, with reverence. That's the strange part. The calm after the storm feels heavier than the storm itself. People move slower now. They stare into the distance. They murmur about the next planting, about the roof tiles that will need replacing, about the missing pickling jar swept away by water. You sit with them, chewing in silence. You understand now that life here isn't built for comfort. It's built for endurance, and it doesn't always succeed. A few days later, another traveler arrives, dirty, soaked, limping. He's from a neighboring village, now gone, flooded. No survivors in the northern district. Just mud, ruins, and stories. You help make space for him in the temple shelter. You donate your extra blanket. You share your bowl of rice, even though you only had half to begin with. That night, someone reads a sutra by lantern light. The verses are slow, rhythmic, grounding. You don't know the words, but the meaning is clear. Grief, yes, but not despair. Because tomorrow, they'll plant again, they'll fix the walls, they'll weave more sandals, they'll keep going. And so will you, as you lie on your futon, still slightly damp. You feel a strange sensation. It's not peace, not pride, it's resilience. You're not strong, not yet, but you're learning how to stay, even when the wind howls, even when the walls shake, even when there's no one left to tell you what to do. You breathe deeply and sleep. When it comes is dreamless, just rest. The world wakes slowly this morning, and so do you. Not because you're allowed to sleep in, no, that fantasy died on day one, but because the air has shifted. It's cooler, softer, the kind of morning that feels like an apology after several hard days in a row. You stretch beneath your linen blanket and feel every muscle complain like it's auditioning for a tragic play. Your back is stiff. Your ankles crack. Your hands are rough from rope, rice, and regret. You've survived storms, patrols, scoldings, and sandals. Now you face your final trial, a completely ordinary day. Again, you start by hauling water. Of course you do. The buckets are familiar. Now you know the well. You've stopped spilling half the load on your own feet. You're handed a small broom to tidy the steps of the magistrate's house. You do it perfectly this time. No one says anything, which means you did it right. You're asked to sort millet into bowls by weight. You finish early. Someone claps you on the back. You eat your rice and pickles without complaint. You chew slowly. You taste everything. You're no longer just passing through this life. You're in it, and when you look in the mirror, a bronze disc polished bright enough to reflect your sunburned cheeks. You hardly recognize yourself. Your posture is straighter. Your sleeves fold without thinking. You don't just bow, you mean it. You help gather firewood with a group of children. They tease you. One of them tries to race you carrying kindling. You let him win. Later, while shelling beans, you overhear two elders discussing an old tale. A wandering spirit who was cursed to relive the same day over and over until he learned gratitude. You chuckle. They notice. You've heard that one? One asks, in a way, you say. Someone asks if you'll be staying longer. You hesitate. The truth is, you're not sure. You were never meant to last a single day here, but now you've survived many. And not just survived, you've understood. The rhythm, the hardship, the joy that sneaks in, not with grand gestures, but in the steam of your mizzo, the quiet nod of a stranger, the way a cracked bowl still holds tea. Before dusk, you're invited to walk the fields one last time. Not to work, just to see. The rice is taller now. The wind brushes it in slow waves. The frogs sing their usual chorus. A fox watches from the trees. You bow to it. You return to the house. Your futon is freshly aired. Your robe smells of cedar, and tucked beneath your pillow is the original omamori, the first one you were given. It's been stitched shut again, its red cord retied. A note is left beside it. Just two characters. To live, you lie down, hands resting lightly on your chest. And now, at last, we begin to slow. Your breath evens, the noise in your head softens. The paper walls gently rustle as the breeze drifts through, carrying the scent of rain that's still hours away. You feel your body sink, not into a futon, but into a kind of stillness earned, deserved. The house around you doesn't creak anymore. It hums, quietly, confidently. No more fears of punishment. Number. Moral confusion about robes or rice or rituals. You are just here, with the ghosts, with the foxes, with the stars beyond the roofline. The fireflies begin their dance outside the door, bobbing gently like lanterns on water. The wind moves the trees, just enough to lull you. You are not being tested now. You are being held. And whatever tomorrow brings, be it harvest or hardship, laughter or loss, you'll meet it not as a visitor, but as someone who truly lived a day in feudal Japan, and somehow, unbelievably, made it through. So rest now. There is no rooster yet. No bucket. No broom. Only the hush of dusk, the weight of linen, the warmth of breath. You are safe. You are still. You are asleep.